Welcome to the Tao of Pizza, where we feature top logistics leaders, entrepreneurs, and supply chain innovators and share their inspiring stories with a holistic twist.
Mark Hiddleson here, host of the Tao of Pizza podcast, where I talk with top industry innovators in the warehousing, logistics, and supply chain business with a holistic twist. Before introducing today's guest, this episode is brought to you by Specialized Storage Solutions. And, I've been in the logistics and storage industry for several decades. I know I don't look that old, but it's true. We provide industry-leading warehouse storage solutions nationwide. So basically, you have a warehouse that needs racks, shelving, carts, conveyors, or mezzanines. We help with the design, engineering, installations, inspections, and repairs to help our clients optimize their logistics operations. And Joey, is funny, sometimes people don't even realize we can actually help with permit acquisition services. We take a holistic look at your entire business supply chain ecosystem to develop the resources for continually improving your operation. To learn more, visit us at specialracks.com or give us a call. And I even give my personal email out to podcast listeners. It's markhiddleson@aol.com. So shoot me a call or email if you're ready to take your warehouse storage and retrieval systems to the next level. And one more thing before I introduce Joey Spanjers is I have to thank Paul Jarrett of the Bulu Group. He introduced me to Joey. Bulu Group specializes in the tricky ship. And Paul and I had a great conversation a few weeks ago about what that means. And that episode's generated a ton of interest, so go check it out. Now, today we're joined by Joey Spanjers. He's a business development and strategy expert with over 10 years of experience building and operating businesses from the ground up. He's helped build B2B agencies and SaaS companies along with DTC brands and marketplaces. Joey's always looking for ways to connect the dots. He's a definition of I have a guy for that. His current company, Teicor, helps companies grow profitably and sustainably through performance, bookkeeping, and profitability planning. He's industry agnostic, covering everything from better for you CPG to cannabis on a global scale. Joey, welcome to the Tao Pizza.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I love your intro. When the first time I read it, I was thinking, man, this is a great outline for the interview, because I love to go through the I can't even think of what they are, but the DTC and the 3PL and SaaS. And what I remember, it was probably not that long ago when I figured out what SaaS meant.
The acronyms can lose you. I mean, with my partner, especially as we get deeper in the finance world, it's endless. We're even making up our own, which we'll reveal at some point. So we're just more to confuse people, I guess.
Yeah, I have acronyms that I love. I use them, to create, like I have a space-time paradigm audit, which there's something for the S, the P, the A, the C, the E, and it's like all these things. And so it was I remember I went to a lot of network meetings when I was new in the business, and they'd be like, what do you do? And they're like, we help B2B people do their D2C with the LTLs and everything else like that. And you're like, I know what two of those things mean. So share a little bit about, and I promise in the first 10 minutes, we'll go through all of those just in case, and I love that you've built and operated businesses, because a lot of people in this space have always been in software development. And I think building and operating a business gives you different perspectives. So before we dive into the acronyms, what was the journey like getting to where you are? Like, how did you go?
Yeah, honestly, I think I'm a constant problem solver, builder, and so that probably started at a young age, but really manifested itself in college, where I went to Georgia Tech, which is an engineering school. One of the things I loved about Georgia Tech is, also probably not one of the best things, is didn't really prepare you for a job, but it prepared you to solve problems. So it's allowed me to go across industries. I think one thing that I left out of my intro is I started my career in television, working for Mark Burnett, Survivor, The Apprentice, Shark Tank, The Voice. And so I've just continued to jump around from industry to industry and really go after things that, have gotten me curious. And it's funny, when I got into the D2C e-commerce space, I was actually making adventure films at the time, and they reached out to me because I knew a lot of brands in the outdoor space. So the company One Stop was looking for, and they handled like end-to-end e-commerce, and they essentially wanted more outdoor brands. They were already working with Camelback, and they saw my relationships. And I was like, to be honest, like I'm probably the last person you want to work in direct to consumer because I don't buy much. I'm like a terrible consumer. It's just not very materialistic. And so like I don't know anything about shopping online, but for me it was beautiful because, working in television, you would create a story, you would go through several gatekeepers, they would whittle down this like giant ball of clay into this tiny version of the original ball, which basically was a copycat version of Storage Wars. And you're kind of like, okay, well, that idea is not what I started with. And then when you needed to get analytics on how you were doing, I remember we would call this hotline at NBC, and essentially, you'd sit on this recording and they would recite Nielsen numbers, and it was like, oh, you got a 4.3 over 9. And you're like, I don't know what that means, but I'll put it in a little Excel document and sure. And so when I started really looking into direct consumer, I was like, wait a minute, there's this thing called Google Analytics, and I can actually see like what works, what doesn't work, what I need to do more of, what I need to do less of. That's very like early basic e-commerce stuff. And I was like, wow, this is like a game changer. So I can tell a story directly to someone. I can create a product that they ultimately, want to support by pulling out their wallet and having in their possession. And then I have all the analytics to tell me what works and what doesn't work. So that was sort of the first time I was like, wow, this is actually something I never considered, but is exactly where I want to be. And so adapting, again, my engineering background just allowed me to say, hey, okay, so what's the challenge? Like, what do we need to do here? And it just took me a little time to get ramped up, but it was super fun. So
Nice. What was your degree in Georgia Tech? What were you studying? I almost went there for my master's degree. They were one of the only, I mean, this was 20 years ago. They were one of the only schools that had logistics. They have some kind of master's degree in logistics.
yeah,
This was like
they have
2000.
the best industrial engineering school in the world. So I
Yeah.
mean, that's where a lot of like your top consultants come out of. I mean, pretty much, you either go into like aerospace or big tech, or you go into consulting. And so I went in as an undecided engineer. I took a few calculus classes, a few computer science classes, and I decided I didn't want to be an engineer. So I focused more on, really the reason I went to tech was never really wanted to be the developer, but didn't want to be in the dark on how all of that works. So like understanding how things work together and like understanding timelines, which has helped me a lot in my career, right? When you're working, in the high tech world, we work with a lot of developers. And so understanding like how to communicate, how long it's going to take, being able to call BS a little bit when they say they need more time than they do and it's going to cost more than it does. So just keeping everybody honest, and then understanding when things take longer and why. And so I guess I ultimately was management. Their business degree is called a management degree, and then I had to focus on finance. So
Nice. I've explored all of those things. I was the same way. I did engineering for 3 years, and I did the pre-calculus, calculus, and I thought I was math genius. And I actually skipped the class to take the statics class because I thought, oh, I can do that. It's not, and I didn't want to fall behind. And you had to have prerequisites. I was like, just let me take
Mhm.
this class early. And I was so lost, and most of the people in that class were. And the instructor gave a speech, and he pointed to the other side of the school. He goes, if you guys want the easier classes, it's at the other side of this school. And that day I was like, I didn't even realize that
Yeah,
was true. And so I walked over there that day, and it was like, I've taken all these classes, and I was really close to having a degree in econ. So I
yeah.
was like, I can have a degree in economics in 2 years. I don't have to take all this other stuff. And there was math and econ and finance, but it was nothing like calculus or statics
Yeah.
or engineering. So yeah,
Yeah, my calculus teacher basically came in after drop day and said, he said, my 5-year-old grandson can do this work. I'm not slowing down. And everybody looked at each other like, what? What are
yeah,
we doing here?
yeah. There's some colorful professors, and I ended up. I mean, it changed my career. I still, were involved in engineering. I think, like you were saying, with timelines and projects, you have multiple people, and there's kind of different languages between engineers and end users. And so I like being a go-between. Are you kind of in developing your companies? Have you done that? Because you developed SaaS or you work with SaaS, software as a service. By the way, SaaS is software as a service. I learned that a couple of years ago at a trade show. So
Yeah, and tell me, I don't know, I just had some sandhill cranes laying in my backyard, and so they're singing it. Can you hear them, or is it okay?
not at all. Yeah.
Beautiful. Apple's a brilliant tool. Uh yeah, so I mean originally I started in, we had our own in-house platform that was really managed in-house. So I've done like internally managed SaaS, and then I had a co-founder that we went to Silicon Valley, did the whole, raise a bunch of money, joining incubators and accelerators, and that was a SaaS solution. Uh, and then, yeah, some other involvement. And I worked with a French company that we were doing a CRO technology. And so that's SaaS. So the main difference is, and this is kind of appropriate for what we do, is that sometimes the tools are used in-house. So the software offerings used in-house, and other times it's licensed externally so that, internal teams in a brand or organization can use those. And with Teicor, we do a lot of work around the finance space, and a lot of the tools and algorithms that we've built are used in-house. And so we we have some proprietary solutions that allow us an advantage and our customers an advantage. So I don't know if at some point maybe we do roll those out, but for now we use them as,
That's part of your internal product and then
yeah.
this process too of bringing different clients because so share a little bit about being industry agnostic and what that means. When I read that about your bio, it's something that's come in our business too, because we do business in the beverage industry, we do it in the cold storage industry, and we all these different verticals. And over the years, I mean, to me, the way I've built my career, you learn so much from your clients that you become an expert in their business more than their business, if that makes sense. Just because you've talked to so many of their competitors or people in similar business in this game about what we know, the racking, the warehousing, conveyors projects. So you probably
Yeah.
similar things in your industry with working with
Yeah, I mean, I
companies.
think there's two real parts to it. One is I'm curious by nature,
Yeah.
and so I love shiny objects, and I've disciplined myself. I mean, part of why we started Teicor is, as I was talking to my partner TJ, it's like I want something so boring that I'm like super disciplined and focused and not chasing what's next. But also the other aspect is that like business, whether it's marketing or your finances or really anything you do, it's a basic math formula, right? You have inputs and outputs, and if the formula is off, you can tell, at the end result, right? And so it's important to look at it like that, right? I mean, you know, the product is important, team is important, branding, messaging, all of that is important, but like you have to be able to measure it, right? In some way and quantify it. And so
Yeah.
I think
And
that is you can apply that across industries, right? I started in e-commerce and I was doing a lot of things around, the pillars of e-commerce, right? It's the design, it's the platform, it's the marketing, it's the customer support, it's the fulfillment, photography. And then, I was good at that. And then I got recruited to help build a marketing agency with one of my friends. And, again, it's just sort of like the same exercise over and over again. And because of my background in e-commerce, I was brought in to help solve challenges in cannabis. Listen, there are a lot more roadblocks and hurdles in cannabis, from advertising, from a logistics, from a licensing. And so you have like different parameters, but basic same thing is like you have to be able to acquire customers at an efficient clip and retain those customers and do it, initially you don't do it profitably because you're learning, but as you learn, like the business only survives if you can do it profitably.
that's where the bookkeeping comes in. And I think bookkeeping is one of those. I took it in high schools. I kind of had a dream, like I'm going to own a business at some point. At that point, I looked at how much of a knucklehead I was, and I was like, I have no idea
Yeah.
how it's going to happen, but at some point, And I just wanted it. And one of the cool things is like I was the only guy in that class. It was all girls, and I don't know. I'm like, why would it be that way? But I didn't really. Uh, but I loved learning. We learned with like green sheets and debits and credit. It was totally counterintuitive, but like writing all that stuff down. And when I started my business, I had QuickBooks and everything was generating these reports. At least I knew where that stuff was coming from. I think it gave me a big advantage. And
Yeah.
as a business owner, I'm kind of like I like the marketing, the sales, the execute, and for the bookkeeping, it's kind of something I have to do. But I love your company. You're like, this is a strategic advantage if you can do it right, because that's where everything, like if you have a question about what's working and what's not, it's that all your answers are going to be in the bookkeeping, right? Or a
Yeah, I
lot
mean,
of them.
absolutely. I mean, I don't think anybody other than maybe bookkeepers and TJ and I have ever said like, I want to start a company so I can do bookkeeping.
It,
uh, it's I mean, listen, but the reality is if you're going to run a business, you have to keep your books, right?
yeah.
Whether you do it in-house or hire an expert. And and TJ loves the statistic, bookkeeping has been around for 7,000 years. And the truth is that there hasn't been a ton of innovation. I mean, of course, you have QuickBooks and you have Zero and you have a bunch of other tools out there that allow you to do things. And there are some interesting ones that are talking about, automating 100%, which, I believe kind of. And, but the methodology of how, and what makes a good bookkeeper today versus what I think will make a good bookkeeper 5 years from now is that most bookkeepers, you want a bookkeeper that is accurate, that is reconciling on a regular basis, hopefully at least monthly. Sometimes people only do it quarterly, depending on the velocity. Now, if they have significant transactions, then they're almost doing it daily. And then you just hope they don't make mistakes and categorize things properly. But the majority of bookkeeping and majority of bookkeeping tools out there are really focused on like, how do we keep the tax man happy, right? And how do we make it easier for our CPI to follow our CPA to file our taxes? But as a business starts to scale, so a lot of the companies that we work with are post revenue and ready for high stage growth. We focus on CPG and consumer goods primarily because, it's really our briar patch. They're usually typically complex businesses. They're selling online, they're selling in retail, and as those businesses start to scale, right? Some of them are very capital intensive, so margins matter. They have to keep basically two sets of books, right? One, their QuickBooks, and the other one is how they operate their business, right? So that's typically a spreadsheet. A lot of times that is managed by, either an internal CFO or fractional CFO. And I think CFOs are fantastic and they're an important piece of the puzzle. But the reality is like the better the CFO you get, typically the more complex their spreadsheet is. And as an operator, I've been an operator myself, and I know I've spoken to hundreds of operators over my 10-year career in e-commerce. Like the more complicated the spreadsheet, the less likely they are to look at it. So it's important to
Yeah.
take data and put it in a meaningful way where they can, Shopify's done a great job of doing that for e-commerce operators, right? They can go look in their dashboard, they can see the important key metrics, and they can move on, right? And the same thing I think is what you'll see with bookkeeping as it evolves is that, people are going to need more actual insights to keep up with the pace of business. And so,
So
bookkeeping is like a really good way too, to be honest, it's funny because once we start helping people with their financials, like really what we're focused on ultimately is like making sure people have an honest understanding of the financial health of their business, right? You have people that are interested in longevity and they'll go to the ends of the earth to get their blood work, their aura rings measuring their sleep schedule and do all these things to manage their personal health. Like, why not do that for your business as well? And so if you can make those metrics more actionable, I think you can go a long way. And so that's what's been working for us for sure.
yeah, and I'm glad. So I'm not stoked about bookkeeping, but about waiting for somebody to come along like you guys who is stoked
Yeah.
about it. And I mean, I was reading a lot about data and everything. Our company's been small. It's always been a few employees. We've done
Mhm.
anywhere from like 2 to 3 million a year in revenue. Our business is unique. Like most of our, and we do everything on QuickBooks. But
Mhm.
I was looking, I was like, okay, after, 20 years, that's like, 40 or $50 million in business. And so I paid a small boutique data firm to just look at my QuickBooks because I go, any data I have, if it's electronic or everything, it's in there. So I just
Mhm.
kind of gave it. We had some meeting, a couple discovery meetings, everything. And I was like, look, I want to find out. Show me what you can do. You know what I mean? It wasn't that
Yeah.
big of an investment, but kind of like you're saying, at least I could, like, what is it going to say? If it says nothing, I would be scared, right? Well,
Yeah.
found out that like out of 50, I forget it was 50 or $60 million, like 80% of that I could connect the dots, like you were saying, connect the dots back to 30 different people.
Mhm.
And it was actually when I started think kind of the same time I was thinking about a podcast because like, where's the value in my business or like the main, and it was those 30 people because I had learned from them. They were mentors, they were customers, they'd given referrals. And, if I hadn't done that, I mean, I kind of knew what I was, I had a feeling like, well, these guys keep showing up and everything. And but when you could trace it, and there were these big dots, there were balloons, and those balloons were like people on it was
Mhm.
something with Excel that you could just do that was wild. I forget. There's another program that goes with Excel where you can make graphs. I can't even think of it. Turno or
Yeah,
Turbo or
those tools are interesting. The a little bit of the challenge with some of those tools is depending on how much data you're processing, they start to slow things down. So that's why you need to start getting more into proprietary solutions.
yeah,
At some point, a SaaS solution that we'd offer, but really focus on being able to handle that data properly. I mean, it's TJ. I keep talking about TJ. He's my business partner. He handles a lot of the client side, and he's the one that will spend time in the spreadsheets. He's the biggest spreadsheet nerd I know. I mean, for Christmas, he was given a coffee mug that said "Freak in the Sheets" and with Excel on it. And but I mean, I've
I
seen
love
the
play on words like that.
yeah, the
That's
level of
it.
complexity that he's built into different spreadsheets for, previous consulting people, you get that spinning wheel of death from Apple. And it's he's got a pretty powerful computer. So I think listen, depending on the size of your business and those tools can be helpful, but I think I don't know if it gets you all the way where you need to be. And, bookkeeping for us is really just the starting point, right? Once we help people get their financials in place and organized, I mean, think if you can think about it, right? Like on the marketing side of your just a D2C brand, you're managing multiple ad networks, right? So you have Meta, you have which is Facebook and Instagram, you have TikTok, you have Amazon, you have, I mean, Snapchat, Twitter. I mean, it goes on and on, right? That's just on the advertising side. Then you have other platforms like your lifecycle marketing. That could be PostScript, that could be Klaviyo, handling all of your emails. And then you have your Shopify data. And so that's, there's probably like 10 tools, standard tools that you need to run just a basic e-commerce business. Now, like go into retail, and we call this brick and click, right? And retail, if you're selling, listen, you're selling a product. If you get into Walmart or Target or HEB or your local independent retailers, like there's whole different, selling reports for all that information too. So it just gets compounding. And those are things that you have to look at every single month, if not every single week, right? And eventually like you run out of time, right? And so if you don't have good systems, you don't have good process, and you don't have a good way to visualize it, you're flying essentially blind, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes very challenging to operate, and you miss things, right? You may miss, we've gone through the books on some clients, and we've noticed that they've shipped inventory to warehouses, and but the manufacturer actually left a pallet off. And so now, and they're reflecting that they have, shipped, basically $15,000 worth of product that has been shipped but was never shipped. And so now they have this deficit. Now there's recovery. I mean, it's already sunk into finished goods, right? And it's a perishable finished good. So it just gets more and more complicated. Or the other challenge that we see a lot too is, when companies are in the early stages, they go through this life cycle of, okay, I'm going to go raise around friends and family. I'm going to start my product for the first time. I'm going to figure out who can make me labels and who can make me pouches and who can manufacture the product. And they have sort of a moving finish line, right? On when they get that done, it may take them a month, it may take them 3 years, right?
Right.
But once you start in market, you don't have this this infinite timeline, because once you start getting orders to big retailers, if it's missing off the shelf, there's a good chance that they're going to fill you with someone else, and you've lost that opportunity. And if you've lost it on a local store, it may prevent you from going more regionally or nationally, or it may impact your already existing national rollout. Like, hey, these people can't keep up with our demand, and our customer is expecting to see this product on our shelf. We can't risk that for our brand. And so I think another thing that comes up too is, okay, when do we fundraise, right? So that friends and family was a great thing that got us to where we are. But if we keep going to the VC route, we're going to be left with 1% of our company before we know it.
Right.
And so you have to look at other options of like how you finance. And again, you can't do that unless you understand your financial health.
Yeah. And so would you say, I love that you shared that story too, because you gave kind of a specific example of this is what it takes to kind of build a company, all those different things happening.
Yeah.
What kind of systems, like your ideal client right now, what kind of systems are they using right now? Or are they using a combination? And if what's the combination? What's your gut? Like what are they using now? Is
I
it
mean,
just something
there's
else?
not really a tech stack that we recommend. I mean, we're really, at this point, we're agnostic. We're pulling a lot of the reports ourselves, and you know, we we're up for the challenge, right? So I think, as we continue to build out more integrations into our proprietary tools, there will be, more common things like obviously a Shopify or an Amazon. But on the retail side, I mean, it differs a lot, right? Depending on, if you're in the alcohol space or not, right? If you're selling through online retailers or independent retailers, or if you're working with Walmart or Target or Sprouts, you name it. There's some variance. So right now we don't have a ton of preference on that. I mean, for the most part, people are going to be on QuickBooks, and they're going to be using pretty standard e-commerce platforms. We can really work with any right now. So I mean, the more we want to be a little bit. We obviously we want to be someone's bookkeeper. We help. With our forecasting and demand planning and all of our profitability planning, we're a little bit Oracle, but in a lot of ways we're a therapist. Give us what you don't want. We'll make sense of it, and we'll help walk you through this process. And I think that's we're
So
open to any.
yeah, I think you should say more about that because uh around 2000, it was early in my career. I've been doing this around 3 years, and I was just rocket ship to the top of the sales and was making great money. And when the dot com crash happened for the first time in like 5 years, I saw my income to go down like 20 or 30%. And I was thinking, man, I need to do something that's not as reliant on the economy going up and down, that's more reliant on me. So I'm
Mhm.
going to get another degree. And I always knew I was going to get a master's degree at some point. So now I'm like 30, and I was thinking MBA in finance. I was looking at Wharton. I was looking at schools, and I was doing a lot of soul searching, and something just hit me like, study what you're passionate about, which was the mind body problem and philosophy and health and fitness.
Mhm.
So I ended up getting my degree, a master's degree in holistic health education. But
Nice.
people always ask me, they're like, how does that relate to what you do? And it was just amazing, the communication and the insights when you talk about health of systems, a lot of the same principles apply to personal health and business health. And then, but the communication factor and the therapy, like a lot of my master's degree was experiential stuff. I was laughing about last night because people would say things like, what comes up for me right now is, and so there were just like safe ways to say things like, instead of you're wrong or it's not that way, you say like what comes up for me or I want to create a space for, and it was a language, but it wasn't just that, it was getting into those because sometimes people get into those things and they're scared. It's like, I'm not telling you anything, Joey. It's like you go back and work
Yeah.
magic, but we're only going to tell you the surface level stuff. But to do anything good, you kind of got to get. Is that why you're using the therapy analogy, or did I mess that up?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, to be honest, I think a lot of the success that we've had so far has really been, about our longstanding relationships professionally. And so it's trust, it's setting expectation, it's delivering on those expectations. We always like to have a scoreboard. We like to be as communicative as possible on like what does the next month look like? What does it look like after that? And if something, listen, if something's off, like we're just going to call it how it is, and be very direct. And so I think that probably the most common, like, not why someone doesn't work with us, by what takes a little warming up to in general is there's this interesting dichotomy of being a founder, right? Or a business operator. Because public facing, like you've created this product, whatever it is, you have this widget and you're telling the whole world, right? That I've created this product. Here's a reason A, B, and C of why you want this product. This is why it's good for you, so on and so forth, right? So you're facing your peers, your investors, like potential buyers, like consumers on the market, right? And you're putting off this aura that I'm doing great, everything's awesome, like things are cruising along, right? And that you're here for the long haul. But the reality is, a lot of times the financials don't match that story. And it's not because anything they said to you is incorrect or false. It's just the reality is like business throws curveballs at you, right? We had a pandemic. Supply chain, we had container ships getting stuck in the Suez Canal. Regulations change. You could even have a buyer change roles within an organization, and the person that had committed verbally to get your order, now they've left and someone else has replaced them and it's got lost, right? So you maybe bought too early on some inventory and now you're sitting on things. And I think for people, having someone that they can trust or letting go of that sort of like, I will let someone in and basically see everything I've got. It's a very uh, that's where a lot of the therapy comes in. It's like you have to be someone that people can trust, right? And
Yeah.
I think, listen, there's a lot of, I mean, also, I don't think there's a lot to hide, right? It's just
Yeah.
maybe it's like some ego, maybe it's some shame. I don't know, but it exists.
It's
I face it.
people. It's
Yeah,
people. It's like everything. If it wasn't for the people, everything would be
yeah,
running
yeah,
smooth.
yeah,
No, I love that. And I mean, even for me, like I'm a founder in the books. It's an emotional thing. I don't know. It shouldn't be, but I do want it to look a certain way. Like if it doesn't, it kind of sucks for me personally. Even
yeah.
that's my even maybe it shouldn't even be that way, but
Well,
it
I
is.
think that's yeah. Well, I think that's why so like our basic two offerings, right? We do the performance bookkeeping, and with that performance bookkeeping, it comes with profitability planning, right? And under the profitability planning usually fits, cash flow analysis, demand planning, and forecasting. So if I stop just at doing the performance bookkeeping, I'm basically saying, here's where you are, and that could either be good or bad, or if I say, here's where you are, but if you do these things, this is where you can go in 2 years. That's pretty meaningful and that's pretty exciting for people. And I think that gets people over the hump of the reality that like, okay, here's where we are. Like we we have to be honest with ourselves. But if we do these things right, if we make these adjustments, if we, negotiate, better rates on this, or we hold inventory at a shorter time frame, or we put the right growth capital at the right terms at the right time, like, hey, this can go exactly where I thought it was going to go, when I had this idea. And I think that's really reassuring. And then I think the reality is a lot of that organizing of that data, like takes away a lot of that, I guess, that anxiety around it's actually not as bad as they think it is, right?
Yeah,
A lot of
yeah,
times we make things worse than they actually are.
yeah.
It's so sometimes
Or
I think
or
most times it's
there's a
better just to face
bias. There's a bias towards overestimating what you can do in a year, but a total underestimate what you can do in 3 to 5 years. Right? You think you can do all this in a year, you can't.
it.
But you have no idea what you can do in 3 to 5 or even 10 years, especially if you have the right. I'm excited about what you're saying about having all these tools to kind of see what's working, what isn't, and
Yeah.
have it on paper. It's not just in your head; it's on paper. And there was
It's in beautiful charts.
is it? I like
Yeah,
it.
I mean, it's so funny because a lot of times that's why I always encourage people just to like book a time with us, right? Because I can sit here and I can tell you all of the things that we do, and like maybe people listen to half of it. Hopefully,
Yeah.
that'd be great, right? But once I show people like how we operate, how we think about things, and then how we visualize it, it's just a light bulb goes on and on every single time. People are like, what? I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah. Is that crazy?
Yeah.
And then the funny thing is, when we talk to it, we have like, we're very fortunate that we have a network of people that have had, great success. And so as TJ and I started working on this concept, we ran it by a few people. And the funny thing is most people are like, wait, what are you guys doing? Right? Yeah, we're basically, I mean, in simple forms, we're taking all the work that nobody wants to do and we're building a business around that. And it's funny though, because like it's so boring for us. It's exciting, right? Like I love it. I mean, there's nothing more invigorating than obviously, listen, everybody loves to sign a deal, but like my favorite moment is when the client has sent over the data and then TJ has about 24 hours to comb through, organize, take his first pass at it. And then we get on a phone call. We're like, okay. I was like, where have they been? Where are they now? Like, where are we taking them? And that is such an exciting thing because it's like, listen, there are some realities, but for the most part, it's an optimistic story that we're helping them tell. Right. And
Yeah.
I just see the energy, the blood come back into their face again. Like, okay, this is not as bad as I thought it was. And it's like, okay, this is what I need to do. These are the answers I mean, and honestly, it's like a lot of it's like a sounding board, right? Like it's not things that they haven't thought of. I mean, sometimes like, especially in the finance options, like that market evolves so fast, right? Like markets change, funding dries up, new vehicle, really smarter finance people than me come up with new vehicles of lending money. And so like it's hard to keep up with all that and then do the calculation what works. And so like I think that's a pretty common one where we're like, okay, you thought about these were your only options. Well, have you looked at these three? And this is how it fits into your business model. And I think, but for the most part, like they've thought of a lot of these things. They just haven't pulled the trigger on most of them because they don't have the level of confidence or the in-depth understanding of their business to actually make that decision. So
Yeah, well, you can generate. It's also an advantage. You're going to get better interest rate. Like the better your books are, and if it shows, at least if you are making money, and you want to
yeah,
borrow money. Like that's one thing for us. I've always wanted our books because if you're self-employed, it's always harder to qualify for something. And it's like we did something. It was a few years ago, and I was like, man, I bought this house 20 years ago. I couldn't afford it. I was like, now I
yeah,
actually can, but the banks treating like, yeah, I was like, well, you work for yourself. I was like, yeah, I've worked for myself for 20 years. You could have a 5-year job and get fired tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like this should be a strength. And
yeah.
luckily, our books, we do keep. It's not that complicated. I love and we're gonna have something I always do show notes. So
Okay.
we'll put something in the show notes where it's like book a call with Joe or book a call with Teicor. Can we put a link to that in our
Yeah,
notes?
absolutely. That'd be
Because I'd
great.
love to say that's the best way to find out more. And now that I've said that, do you want to say, is there a certain, I love the word customer avatar, but is there a certain client you'd love to talk to, or is it, consumer packaged goods?
I mean, so our current client portfolio is, we have consumer goods. We just started working with this amazing conference that focuses on it's a conference slash community. They focus on helping early D2C founders and experienced D2C founders find community around growing their business so they're not completely solo. They have, great in-person events. And then, so that's not a traditional CPG. And then one of our clients is an animation studio. And so, uh, really, I mean, at a base level, we're just taking years of experience, systems, processes, and a way to visualize it. So it's like just really sound business principles. So like, there's not really a specific industry. I
Yeah.
would say though, we do love CPG, we love consumer goods. But the reality is, like, if you make money and are looking to grow, like, probably worth at least a chat, right?
Yeah. So, for example, like if there was a contractor that had like 6 employees and was going to go from like 3 million to 10 million in the next 5 years, and they're
Yeah,
on QuickBooks, so that'd be a good candidate.
yeah, no,
Like if I had a
absolutely.
friend, I have a friend who has a company like that. You know, everyone always in counseling, you always have a friend who needs help, right? Well, I have a friend that
Yeah.
also special.
Well, that's a beautiful thing too about a lot of the dashboards that we do. I mean, people come to us sometimes not knowing what they want at all, and so we have a good grasp on what everybody really needs to focus on. So we help give them a North Star, with their KPIs, and then we lay out things like cash flow forecasts and things like that. But other times, people need some very specific things, or there's like, a good example is if you're selling into a retail location and you're new sort of in the market, you have a forecast. Okay, so we predicted these locations are going to sell 20 cases a month over the next, 90 days. And as a small business owner, you don't have a full-fledged sales team to call and check on how things are doing all the time, or always be deep in the report. So we've been able to surface opportunities where we have this chart that identifies, hey, these are the stores that we're supposed to order and haven't ordered. Maybe give them a call, and see, is your product sitting in a stock room? Did Anheuser-Busch come in and push you to the back? Like, who knows why that product? I mean, one of the things is I did in college is I drove a beer truck, so I know a lot about I know a lot about playing that game. So
Yeah,
fighting for shelf space in the grocery is tough. So
yeah.
I
My
can't
best
talk
friend
about
did
some of my
that.
tactics, but I was
Yeah,
for the little guy.
nice. So yeah, I have a client, like I've thought of a bunch of different clients. Like I have a client there. So what about a large, like a grocery retailer that has 100 stores in California? And I mean, that's kind of bigger. They have 3 or 4 warehouses. They have external partners. I mean, it seems like, and one of the frustrating things is companies like that, they always think they need a bigger company. Like, well, we need to go to Manhattan or St. Aug, or they like think they're switching to SAP or something like this. Would a company like that be a good match for you, or you really want to deal with? Um,
Well, I mean, it sort of depends, right? So with an organization that size, like we have a client that does $1 billion in revenue, right? And so they have a full-on accounting team, they have a full-on CFO,
yeah,
they have bifurcated accounting systems, and they just have a lot of moving parts. So there are certain aspects that we can do, and we can just laser focus on and do it, without more effectively, without consuming their resource, like too many of their resources, and giving them the information they need at a quicker clip, right?
yeah,
So I would say, like, a larger client like that, it's 50-50 if we would, go in and actually do their bookkeeping for them. We could. It would just sort of depend on, how established they are. So there's always something that we can typically do. But I will say, like, I think for us, personally, we really enjoy working with, companies that are, have product market fit, they have revenue, and are ready for that high stage growth. I think
yeah,
those are, someone that's wearing one too many hats.
yeah, yeah. You're absolutely right. And then the other client I was thinking, we have one. We process returns because that's one of the things about DTC and apparel. The
Mhm.
returns are built in. It's like 20-30% because people will order small, medium, and large, try them all on, and send 2 back, and it happens. So dealing with
Yeah.
those returns, there's a business decision because we've created systems where they can process it quickly, give the customer credit, clean the garments, restock it on the shelf. So we've built these systems, but a lot of it, you're looking at this stuff and going, man. And so they're mostly DTC. They've got a few stores, but I was like, why don't they take half this stuff, just put it on the stores for 70% off and donate whatever doesn't sell at the store? Because the cost of restocking it in your warehouse has to be mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Like, you could give them actual data on that, right? I'm just in there looking like all these clothes aren't going to sell, and you're spending X dollars to reprocess it, put it on the shelf. So to me, that would be an ideal client for you.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's funny. We actually had a call with a fantastic developer that I've known for years. He's worked with pretty much anybody under the sun, and he was walking us through some of the use cases that he's had in the past. And there's I think that's the interesting thing about looking at it from a modeling perspective, right? Like, as each, a lot of what we do is in in modular capacity, right? So, like, you're selling online, you're doing an Amazon, your business has, multiple SKUs with a high propensity for returns and trying on different sizes. we can build that into the forecasting and help alleviate a lot of that. I think, probably the simplest way to do that for someone that has a CPG company specifically is, making sure you're ordering and making inventory at the right time. There's that ticking clock starts as soon as you manufacture that product, right? And then you've got to have sell through, you've got to monitor all these things. But I don't know, it's fun. Business is fun. It's like if it was all easy, everybody would do it. And
Exactly.
that's a glutton for the punishment and the challenges. And I don't know, it's like gives you a reason to wake up each day, I guess.
No, I love it. I'm glad you guys are passionate. I mean, you're passionate about it. And so that's what I like, doing business with people who are passionate about it. It's like, you get excited when you find something. I mean, that to me, that means like you're probably waking up in the middle of the night, or we're running out of time. I wanted to ask you some personal questions, like what kind of hobbies, the three things I like to ask about: what are your favorite hobbies? What's your favorite podcast? And what's your favorite new tech?
Oh man. Gosh, hobbies. So I've started an organization that's focused around the legal mushroom space. It's a community, my co-creator on this. We basically just saw a big conversation happening around mushrooms. And so we started this thing called Mount Mushmore, where we go around the country feeding people delicious mushrooms. So all fully legal. We're talking more about the chagas, the rishis, the maitakes, the king trumpets, and showing people beyond portobello and white button mushrooms, and showing them different ways to prepare this food. And we do a lot of basically all of our dinners now are non-alcoholic. And so we bring in these fabulous formulators that make these elixirs. And so they use all these different types of things that you can find at like a Whole Foods basically, or a high-end health store. And we teach people how to sort of enjoy themselves and try new things outside of alcohol. So that's been a lot of fun. I love to eat. I love to host people. And the mushroom space lends itself to some punny language. And
Yeah. Do you have any of the regular the good mushrooms, or is it all?
I know a guy.
Because that's my holistic health and my I don't want to get too into mine because we're running out of time. But my father
Sure.
and my father or my stepdad has uh neuropathy from military service and everything. He was in Vietnam, but he has a lot of things. And mushrooms are one of the. I mean, he's looking into some of the therapies that actually helps with that. Then there's places in Oregon. He's always looking for information. It's actually hard to find. So we're gonna something in the show notes you guys will talk about later, but we have the resource in there for the delicious mushrooms that you're talking about. And that sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
And I have friends who hunt for mushrooms in the foothills here because there's good resources in Napa to find them.
I would say one of the things that's important about the dinner to understand is that a lot of it's centered around education. So the reason why we have the meal prepared and we focus on a whole wide variety of mushrooms is to, one, educate people on what other mushrooms are out there and different ways to prepare them. The other thing that we always do is we do about 15 minutes of education, and that sort of depends on the setting. So if it's a community one, typically we'll have someone from our community, and we're lucky enough to have people that have brands, people that are writing laws and have dedicated their whole life to writing legislation to help with legalization, or researchers. I mean, we had this fascinating guy, Alex Grave. Not a lot of people have seen his work. Not everybody knows who he is, but he's like a world famous psychedelic artist. And he talked about how world psychedelics impacted it. So I think education is really important. I think on that, that's definitely, stay tuned there. There will be some more resources because I think that's a big problem, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of great brands out there, but it's like people don't necessarily trust the brand that says, "Hey, drink this. This is the best for you." It's like, well, it's your brand, so of course it's the best, right?
Yeah.
So we like to be sort of, Switzerland on that. And then I guess the other things that technology, oh man, I I laugh. I went to an engineering school, Georgia Tech, so you'd think I'd be this big technology nerd, but the reality is I'm more excited about the anti-metaverse. So like my my priorities in life are my ideas is like the new Ferrari is a regenerative farm. So at the end of the
Nice.
day, I would like to build what I tell all my friends, I'm going to build the anti-metaverse. So
I love that. I love
run around
that.
barefoot, give my kids
So,
bow and arrows before I give them an iPhone. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yes. Yes, we're the meat of the podcast. That's why
Yeah.
Oh man, my kids like, yeah, we play football in the house, we ride skateboards in the house, we do dangerous stuff and
Yeah.
ATV. Yeah, to the opposite of the member. I love that. I've never been a member of Facebook. I look at I saw some cartoon or something that said somebody has like a $5 million house on Metaverse or something, but that's a beautiful way of saying it. So that's and I noticed you saw the birds. I'm glad we didn't get sidetracked because one of the things I do drives my wife crazy. We have a lot of bird life in Napa. And if I see a hawk, you see a lot of vultures and they're awesome, like 8 foot wingspan and everything. We get some hawks. If I ever see a hawk, I'll stop the conversation and go, hawk. And go. So are the birds still singing out there where you're at?
No, they left. There's like 2 or 3 of them that come to hang out all the time. And so we have a golden retriever that occasionally gives them a little nudge when they get too close. So
Nice.
it's a little, I guess, bird and dog game versus cat and mouse. And so
Yeah.
they have a fun relationship. But back to your point, it's all about systems, right?
Yeah.
Systems.
Holistic systems. And I love, the regenerative farm is the new Ferrari. It's funny. I've actually thought about that, or starting a community that generates regenerative farms instead
Yeah.
of Ferrari. So
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that's I mean, listen, like obviously people have to make money to live, right? And so like we have, our company like pays us, right? But I think the more exciting thing about it, and really the reason why we do it is, we like to see if I can help a company, right? So say someone starts a company that is, a mushroom company. They're like, hey, we have this mushroom that's great for brain health, right? And we've gone to the ends of the earth to source this mushroom to make sure it's organic, that it's grown properly, that we extract it properly, we mix it with the right ingredients, and the packaging we use is this, that, and the other, and do all those things, right? A lot of that stuff costs money, right? And the more the deeper you go down that rabbit hole versus like taking something off the shelf, it gets expensive. And so if we can help those companies, that have these formulas, these better for you companies that have great formulas, have done a lot of the hard work, and help them just do that more profitably, like how much more of their company can they own in the long run, right? Like if they're operating more profitably, like do they always have to sell that company to a larger company, right? Or that can be the rest their lifestyle business that is not paying them like a lifestyle business. And then the formula stays intact. They're excited about, waking up every single day and doing it. And I think, with some minor tweaks to, and just real awareness into what's happening in their business, I think more people can achieve that success. And so for us, it's like that ultimately helps the end user, right? If you can help them do things more sustainably, more profitably, then hopefully that you can price things more affordably, right? So more
yeah,
people can have access to healthier options that, keeps them out of, having to go see their doctor all the time. So,
totally.
I don't
Absolutely. Healthy systems. Man, Joey, I want to be the first to say thank you. I've been excited about this. Glad we connected. Thanks again to Paul Jarrett for the introduction. Uh, this has been a great episode. I can't wait to post it. And just what's the best? We're going to have the best way to get a hold of you on the show notes.
Yeah, so I mean, our website is teicor.com, teicor.com.
Yep. We'll have
Easy
it.
to go on there to book. I'm Joey Spanjers. My name's on there. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can reach out wherever. We're pretty accessible. We like being accessible. But yeah, you can book directly. Times on our site. We can chat and see if we
Yeah.
can help, or we can just talk about the anti-metaverse. I don't really care.
Yeah. Book a strategy call. I'm going to. This was my pre-strategy call, and
I
some of
like
the
it.
yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely and I'm gonna tag some people when I post it on LinkedIn that I think
Awesome.
would love to check it out. Thank you
Well,
so much. Yeah.
yeah, well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been great getting to know you better, and thanks for giving us a voice in the world.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Performance bookkeeping. I love it. Joey
All
Spanders, thank you so much.
right, take care.
Thanks for listening to the Tao of Pizza podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.